Hey guys, Double Wide 6, and today I'm working on this little John Deere mower that was making that weird sound. So with the last video I had the mower running and we were listening to the sound and trying to figure out what's wrong with it just by the ear. And I know the audio was a little bit hard to hear, but we're going to take a look at the mower. I'm not sure what's wrong with it. I have a hunch, I know what's wrong, so we're just going to go through and troubleshoot this one together and see if we can get it going. I'm just going to remove some covers to give you guys a little bit better access. Alright guys, just so we can get a baseline before we start, some of you noticed when I was spinning the blade that the compression was low. So I just want to get a compression test, and I think we'll see it is low. And I think we'll also find that we're losing compression through the intake valve. We'll put you guys in so you can see the gauge. Now, I'm hoping we have, I'd like to see on an engine like this over 100, maybe as much as 130. And this engine's about, I don't know, 18 years old or something like that. So, yeah, it's not going to be as high as it originally was. So we'll give this a few pulls and we'll just try and get a baseline. And we can see our compression is really low. I'm surprised that even started, because it was reading about 30. Well, it actually looks like 28. Usually you need about 55 or so for the engine to start. So definitely a sign that we're losing our compression and that air is leaking out of there. So now we got to figure out where it's coming out. Alright, next thing we want to do is just verify for sure that the air is coming out the intake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the engine at top dead center on the compression stroke. Oops. Hang on. So right there. And I'm going to just blow some compressed air in there and verify that it's coming out the intake side. I don't think I'm on a compression stroke. Bring this up one more time. Right there. Pretty close. Okay, so the intake valve is not closing. So the next thing that we're going to do, luckily this one's an overhead valve. We'll get into that. Alright guys. So put a rag there for oil. And try and pull this apart. That one seemed almost loose. A couple people said the problem with the engine may be a blown head gasket, and it's not on the galley side of the engine, and that's why you're not seeing any smoke. I did take a look around the head, and I didn't see any evidence of, you know, a blown head gasket. No oil or discolored carbon or anything like that. And I did check the bolts. They were tight. So that's what led me to want to get in here. The other thing that a lot of people said could be an issue could be the timing. And the timing may be off if there's a sheared flywheel key. But we're going to just start with this valve cover. It could also be a lean carburetor condition that can cause that hissing. At first, when it runs, it sounds like there's an exhaust leak, but I checked the muffler and that's on solid. So it seems like the the problem is leading me towards the intake valve. So we'll pop this off and take a look at it. Try and get that off without damaging anything. Alright, we're in, so now we got to figure out what's going on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of visually inspect and see what's going on. You'll notice you have a spring and then there's a cap on there, and both caps are in place. Sometimes these caps get loose, and I was just watching a real good Musty One video where he was searching for one of these caps that somehow fell all the way back into the engine, and after an hour or so he got it out. So that's not our issue. We have the cap, and next thing I want to do is just kind of turn the engine over, and you know, I can look at the push rods and see if they're bent or anything. The bottom valve here, you can see, goes to the carburetor, so that's our intake, and that would make this one the exhaust. So we'll just pull it over and we'll see if our valves are moving properly. They seem to be moving. I don't notice any issues with the push rods. They're all in place. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to check our intake and exhaust valve. Usually the intake on these is about 4, and the exhaust should be about 5 or 6 thousandths. So I'm gonna get my feeler gauge and we'll see where we're at with these things. So I'm gonna turn this engine over. Once this exhaust valve goes all the way in, we should be able to check our intake valve. And right there is 4 thousandths. Feels a little sloppy. Here's a 13 thousandth. And that one's even fitting in there. So, you know, we're out three times, 4 times what it should be. Alright, we're going to set the intake at 4 thousandths. So first thing we got to do is loosen this up. There's a little set screw in here, so we turn that out. And now what we want to do is tighten this nut until we get it to our 4 thousandth. So we'll just bring this nut in. Just till it's kind of snug. Well, not snug. It should still slip. It's a little too tight here. I'd say right about there feels pretty good. There's a little bit of resistance. It's a little tight right there. Alright, now we got that where we want it. We're just going to set this set screw. We'll hold the nut right where we got it. And we should be able to slip in here. That's feeling pretty good. Alright, now we'll turn this one over, and we're gonna set the exhaust. I'm going to set the exhaust at the same, do them both at 4. So when the intake goes in, there goes our intake. Let's say that's it. Little sloppy. All right. Little tight there. I'd say right there is good. Yeah, that feels good. Okay, I'm going to give it a pull. Hopefully it starts without the airplane on. Well, it doesn't look too good. We're still hissing. So the next thing I want to look at is going to be the flywheel key. I'm going to start just by removing our covers. Alright, we're going to pop off the flywheel. Just going to lube up. This is PB Blaster. I just shoot out of this vapor can. A little cheaper to do it that way. Pop our nut. And, well, we have a sheared flywheel key. I can see it. So we're taking a look in here, and you can see the keyway. And if you look down, you can see we're sheared, but we're only off a little more than a 1/16 of an inch. So we'll pop off this little fan and try and find a spot where I can pry. This should be good. And we'll just try and pop this off. Good pressure on the crowbar. Spin it a little. It's rusted up pretty good. I don't think this mower was left outside. That one took a little bit. Luckily, I take apart engines that are bad and that can't be fixed, and I salvage parts, and one of them I always keep is the flywheel keys. This one's in good shape, it's used. This is the one that was on the machine, and there's a better look at the end view of it, and you could see, you know, it's sheared halfway through, and if you look at the end view of this one, you can just see it's a solid piece.
Did the girls eat?
Yes.
Oh, pardon me.
Pardon me.
Well, babe, last night was the first night in about 15 years that I slept without Xanax. No round of applause.
Hear that, guys? Round of applause, please.
I think that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. I didn't know I stressed you out that bad. Alright, now we want to see if this thing works. We think we got it. Give it a shot of Go Juice. And we'll see what happens now. We can rule out the valve clearance, and we can now rule out the partially sheared flywheel key. The next thing I'm thinking that we should look at is going to be the head gasket. I had it running for a little bit, like a minute, and I tried covering up the intake a little bit to richen up the mixture, and there was no difference. So that's what's leading me to believe it's not the carburetor. So now the next thing I want to do is get in there and we'll check for the head gasket. We know it's not the valve clearance. We know it's not the flywheel key. Got a blown head gasket, guys. So congratulations if you got that right. You're better than me. Yep, it's not on the galley side, so you're not getting smoke or anything, or smoke inside the crankcase. So yeah, we got to put a new head gasket on here, and I'll take you in and show you the head, or the top of the cylinder. If you look carefully, right in here, this is where the head gasket is blown. So the air must have been forcing out here. You know, it felt like it was getting forced out and coming through the intake valve. I'm not exactly sure why it felt like the air was coming out here. There may have been an issue with the valves leaking a bit too. Alright guys, so this is the old gasket, this is the new used one, and the holes line up. It's a little bit different design, and once again here's where this failed. So we're just going to clean this up and we'll get this head back together. Alright, this is the head side. Well, it's time for reassembly. Alright, just for the record, both valves needed to be adjusted there again. So I got it back together, guys, and I fixed a lot of things along the way. I had the carburetor off, so I replaced the gasket in here on the air filter box. It needed a new primer bulb because the other one was cracked, so I put one of those on. I put on a new fuel line because the other one was cracked. We replaced the flywheel key. We adjusted the valves. We replaced the head gasket. And I think that's everything that we did so far. And we're going to hope this thing works, because if it doesn't work, I don't know what's wrong with it at this point. So we'll give it a pull. I got everything on here except the plastic top cover. Here we go. Well, guys, this turned out to be an interesting one. You don't always troubleshoot these things and get it right the first time. In the beginning, I was compression testing, and I knew that it was leaking and it was coming out the intake side, but it turns out it was, you know, the broken head gasket, which was broken down in here. I really didn't think it was a head gasket, because I thought, you know, we would have more smoking, so I kind of ruled that out right away. But if you run into one of these overhead valve Briggs engines and you're having an issue like this where you have that hissing, I would definitely check, you know, the head gasket here. And then I just assumed that it was coming out the intake and out the air filter box, but it wasn't. It was actually coming, the sound was coming out directly behind the air filter box in here. So you don't always get it right the first time. The partially sheared flywheel key needed to be fixed anyhow, and the valves did need to be adjusting. I just kind of went in the wrong order here troubleshooting. Another thing that will cause this could be a lean condition in the carburetor. And when I had it running, I tried covering the air box to see if that made any difference, to try and richen the air fuel mixture, and that did not help. So those are just some tips, things that you can look at. You know, we all learn a few things here working on these mowers, and I appreciate the suggestions in the beginning. My guess was it was a problem with the valves, and usually if you have popping noise, a lot of times that has to do with valves and or timing issue. And you know, this was more of a hiss, and this was actually the first time I've seen that. I don't get too many of these engines in. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll put some links down below to some of the tools I used, and thanks for participating in the comment section. And you'll have to let me know what you thought of this troubleshooting methodology down there in the comments. Take care, guys, and have a good day.